Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to the show. It's your host, Danny Hai Fong. As you can see, I am joined by former CIA analyst and geopolitical analyst and commentator, Larry Johnson. Larry, good to see you again.
Hey, I'm back.
Yeah, you're back and better than ever. Well,
I don't know about that, but you know, I'm still on the right side of the grass.
hey, that's what counts. Well, let's get to it, Larry. I first wanted to get to covering what's happened overnight in Operation True Promise 4. Iran has been absolutely pounding Israel in conjunction with Hezbollah and now Yemen, as Israel's interceptors are virtually either ineffective or not firing at all. I just want to pull this up because there have been some very notable strikes, especially in the Ramat Hovav chemical complex near Dimona. Here, a Turkish journalist was there, and he gave a report. I won't play it because it is entirely in that language, but here's a summary from DD Geopolitics. This was a massive blaze at this chemical complex. Some are speculating that there was also a pharmaceutical company hit, that there are multiple sites in the Negev area where this is located also hit. And then the big news, Larry, is that Haifa was just smashed by an Iranian missile or multiple missiles, and that has caused stocks for this oil refinery in particular to go down 4% in just a matter of minutes. Larry, I wanted to ask you about where you see the shape of this war now. Iran hitting the Dimona area seems like a pretty big message, the Negev area, this complex. But it's not just this every single day now, and we're getting reports that the interceptors for the entirety of the Gulf countries could be ranging now just in the hundreds left for the entire U.S. stockpile. Where are we in this war as the threats keep coming from the U.S. and the war continues, but these strikes seem to suggest it's not going very well? What's your thoughts?
Okay, so let's say you have a territory that's 10 square miles, or let's give you 100 square miles. I have a territory that's 10,000 square miles. You're going to launch 20 missiles at me a day, and I'm going to launch 20 missiles at you a day. Who gets saturated first?
We know it's the smaller one.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah. So we're all agreed. That's what's going to go on here. I'm not sure if Iran is 20 times the size of Israel or 30 times the size of Israel, but it's a lot bigger than Israel. Israel really only has three major cities, Jerusalem, Haifa, Tel Aviv. They've got other smaller places, but 55% of the population are in two of those cities. It's not like they've got a dozen power plants scattered around the country or a dozen oil refineries. So just from the standpoint of if each side keeps, delivering roughly about the same amount of firepower on the other, the smaller one's going to run out a lot sooner and not be able to continue the fight. That's what's going on. That's about as simple as I can put it. Israel, it hurts Israel more to take out its one chemical factory than it does to take out one of 10 chemical factories in Iran. Iran's got more, let's call it strategic depth. Now, I'm not saying that Iran's not suffering, terrific damage and that it's awful, but let's just be clear that Israel's ability to withstand pain is a lot less than Iran's. And then when you add in that, the literal ass kicking that Israel's getting from Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, and you've already had one former Israeli chief of staff of the army and one current say, saying, hey, alarm bell, we got a 3-alarm fire here. We can't keep this up. We're running out. We can't sustain this. So when your own military guys are blowing the whistle and raising the red flag, it lets you know you got trouble.
Yeah, the IDF chief of staff has recently sounded the alarm that it's on the verge of collapse in the coming weeks if all of this continues.
Right.
I mean, in this same salvo, in the same wave of strikes by Iran, there was also reports that both Hezbollah and Ansarallah were coordinating in various areas, the Tel Aviv area, northern Israel with Hezbollah, and then in the Dimona area and more south of Israel with Yemen. I mean, there was even reports that Yemen used the Palestine 2 hypersonic missile, which is an incredibly impressive weapon, which travels incredibly long distance in just about 15 minutes to hit
Yeah.
Israel.
Well, the
What's
key,
your thoughts? Yeah.
yeah, the key is, a lot of stuff gets labeled hypersonic, and it's not, a true hypersonic missile is one that travels in excess of Mach 6 and this is the key part, can be maneuvered while in flight. In other words, can fire additional engines and such to change its direction. Let me just, give a plug to Alistair Crook and his wife Aisling. Aisling's quite the linguist, and she goes in and reads the Hebrew language press in Israel, because they say a lot of different things in Hebrew, like talking amongst themselves, as opposed to the English side. And in her latest piece, she wrote, quoting from one of the articles, former Israeli Defense Force Ombudsman General Yitzhak Brick said, quote, "What awaits Israel in the next round of the war is frightening." Then the current chief of staff of the Israeli army stood up and said, "The IDF is collapsing." Now, those are not outside critics. Those are men who either headed up the army, they played a very senior role, or the current guy who's saying, "Look, this is dangerous. We can't keep this up." And the sign of that is coming out of Lebanon. In fact, here's what the chief of staff told the security cabinet. He says, "The Israeli Defense Force is going to implode. I'm raising 10 red flags to you. The IDF now needs a conscription law, a reserve law, a compulsory service extension law. In a short time, the IDF will not be ready for its routine missions, and the reserve system will not last." Now, just in the last week, I forget which day it was. It may have been last Friday or Saturday. Hezbollah hit a column of Merkava tanks. Those are the big bad boys for the Israeli army, and knocked out 21 of them in one day. Previously, they had knocked out 8 on another day. I've consistently heard from multiple sources that since Israel started this offensive into southern Lebanon, more than 100 tanks have been destroyed or rendered inert by Hezbollah. And if you're blowing up a tank, you got a crew inside that tank, and that crew, suffers wounds or even death. So Israel has got itself. They've been unable to defeat Hamas. Hamas is still intact, and Israel, despite having every conceivable military advantage in terms of numbers and quality of weapons and types of weapon systems, has been unable to defeat Hamas. And then they're now caught into another battle. It's worse than what happened in 2006. In 2006, they lost. They were forced to retreat. Now they're suffering even greater losses against Hezbollah. And then they've started this war with Iran. And as we've seen in recent report, I think it was out of the Financial Times, that 80% of the Iranian missiles are getting through. The Israeli much ballyhooed air defense system is crap. Iron Dome is cracked, as is David Sling. They're getting beaten.
Yeah. And Larry, what effect is this having in the war in particular on the Israeli side, but maybe the entire war effort as well? Because, it is difficult to get good images. There's been a lot of surveillance, repression of these censorship of these images. But every single day, this is happening. As you said, now it's 8 of 10 of these strikes are coming in. Iran always reports that there are millions of Israelis going into shelters every single day. What impact is this actually having, especially given that Iran is getting more targeted and escalating what they're striking? Literally, like, I don't know. Nobody knows exactly where where Israel's nuclear weapons are, but they're hitting the area where many believe they are, and then that's a big deal.
Yeah, the karma is a terrible thing, and Israel bought itself some bad karma by killing all the children that is killed in Gaza, and then by starting this war of aggression, the same kind of thing that Adolf Hitler did to Poland, but starting a war of aggression against the people of Iran. And now Iran is able to basically hit any target at once in Israel with little chance of it being stopped. And so maybe you get used to, let's not underestimate the ability of people to endure suffering. I'll just draw the parallel with the siege of the city of Vicksburg during the American Civil War. There you took a lot of these refined, high-class Southern ladies, and they were living in caves dug into the side of the Mississippi riverbank, enduring months of shelling and attacks, and they stuck it out. So you can't dismiss that the Israelis are going to try to tough it out, but Israel's economy crumbles in the process, and they're not going to attract more immigrants coming into the country because of the nature of the war. And then on top of it, just the government of Netanyahu is so clumsy, so stupid. When they shut down, it's one thing to anger the Muslims. We already know that they hate them. But then they did the same to the Christians, shutting access to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre during Holy Week, stretching from Palm Sunday, which was yesterday, forward to Easter Sunday upcoming. And so now they've got the Vatican mad at them, and Italy mad at them, Catholics mad at them. So Israel is writing the opposite book. The one that was it Dale Carnegie wrote, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Israel's doing how to lose friends and have no influence with anybody.
Yeah, and Larry, I wanted to now ask you about the other side of the strikes that Iran is conducting in retaliation to the U.S. and Israeli war of aggression. Now, this is on the Gulf side. Donald Trump said that he wants Gulf countries to pay for the U.S. war effort. He just said this, but it seems like it's going to be the Gulf that's going to need help paying for the aftermath of what's been happening. According to Iranian sources, it says precision missiles just in the last, as we speak, have hit the UAE, a U.S. command and control site. The U.S. Fifth Fleet was struck by drones. And of course, Israel continues to get hit in various areas. An Israeli-owned container ship was just hit as well. But, the Gulf has been getting a beating. And, I can pull up the interceptor numbers now as you comment, Larry, but it's bad. 2,400 interceptors fired in just a month, supposedly in the Gulf. In the Gulf countries.
Yeah, you got to and stop and ask the question: what are they firing?
Yeah,
because there were only at the start, at the end of 2025, the total number of PAC-3 missiles that had been produced for the Patriot 3 was 4,620 maximum. Well, they used up a good number of those. And at least 1,000 in Ukraine, and then another 1,000 at least 1,500 last June during the 12-day war. So right off the bat, the United States entered this war with only, let's say, 2,400 of PAC-3 missiles, and those are capable of shooting down 1,200 missiles. So what are they launching? What I'm suggesting to you is there's some lying going on here, and they are gaslighting.
Yeah, and that's and gaslighting. This is from Bloomberg, shared by DD Geopolitics, talking about these numbers that are being just officially reported. 2,400 used, 2,800 total in the stockpile. I mean, that's bad in and of itself, Larry. I mean, that's bad in and of itself. And I'm curious, even at just those numbers, how long can this go on? Because Israel in the UAE, the Gulf countries, they seem to be, I see the videos, Larry, they seem to be using these in high numbers every single day. I mean, a dozen here, 20 there. You just see it in one video. There's 6 to 10 to 11. So how long can this actually go on? What happens then? It seems like the Trump administration, Israel, they're not too concerned about it, at least in the public facing PR image.
Well, they won't have, I would argue right now, they've exhausted, they're out. There are no more Patriot PAC-3 missiles to shoot. So they're probably dipping into old stocks, the PAC-2. I think they may even had a PAC-1. But those, all those do is make a nice, pretty sight in the sky as they shoot forward, lighting up the sky. But they're not necessarily going to be effective at intercepting. And Ted Polster has maintained all along that the number of people, the number of interceptions that have been claimed in previous wars or previous attacks like this have been grossly exaggerated. So, the reality is none of the Gulf countries have an effective air defense anymore. And Iran can hit them at will with what it wants and is doing so. One of the Iranian spokesmen said the other day, in response to Trump's claim that he said that if Iran doesn't open the Strait of Hormuz, U.S. forces will target Iranian power plants. Well, he said the strait is only restricted to hostile traffic and it remains under Iran's control. Safe passage continues under strict rules. But he says if the U.S. strikes Iranian power plants, Iran's going to fully close the Strait of Hormuz until damaged facilities are rebuilt. It'll target all Israeli energy, ICT, and infrastructure assets. It will destroy regional companies with U.S. shareholders, and it'll target power plants in countries hosting U.S. bases. And that's exactly what it's doing. And after the power plants were hit in Iran. So, Iran hasn't, they're not playing around, and they're not making, like Trump, making idle threats. They do what they say. If you're going to bomb our desalinization plant, we're taking yours out. They took one out in Kuwait yesterday. 35% of the country's fresh water comes out of that plant. No longer. So I think it's a race to see which country in the Gulf collapses first, disappears into history. Will it be the United Arab Emirates or will it be Bahrain? Right now, my bet would be on Bahrain, simply because it is smaller. Its one ruler has abandoned the country, and they have the largest contingent of Shia Muslims there. But Dubai is not far behind. The United Arab Emirates doesn't really have a viable path forward to continue to exist as a country.
Yeah, and yet, Larry, again, there's all, I guess let's divide into two. Israel and the Gulf countries, they keep pressing forward. I mean, despite the alarm bells being sounded by the chief of staff himself in Israel, despite the massive damage, I'm hearing tens of billions of dollars already across the Gulf in infrastructure. Despite this, countries like the UAE, Saudi Arabia, they're all saying push forward and be sure that Iran can never do this again. And that's what they're supposedly telling the United States. I see it as they're more of getting told to say that by the United States. But I'm curious on what your thoughts about this is, because unlike the 12-day war, it seems like they keep going down further and further up the escalation ladder, regardless of the pain that they are experiencing.
So let's be clear about what kind of societies we're talking about. Let's start with the United Arab Emirates. They've got these massive skyscraper buildings, some of the tallest in the world, very elaborately designed, seemingly modern. Yet every morning, trucks have to pull into the basements of those buildings and fill up with human shit because they don't have a sewer system. Okay? Think about this. This highly modern, very supposedly modern, very advanced country has got a sewage system that rivals that of India's, where, a cart will come down the road every day and people will pile their feces into the back. That's not a serious country. And United Arab Emirates right now is without 83% of its income that came in from export of oil, the trade with the free port in Jebel Ali, tourism, real estate, the construction industry, financial industry. It's all basically shut down. So, and as a consequence, Iran has been joking about it, saying that, well, they've at least eliminated prostitution from one of the major Gulf Arab countries, because once the blockade was on and the very wealthy started getting the hell out of there, all the hookers said, well, no more money to be made here, where they headed back north to Ukraine, where a lot of them are from. So UAE is right now is like an angry little chihuahua, toothless, loud, vicious, but doesn't have much of a bite. And 6 weeks ago, it was prepared to go to war with Saudi Arabia. Now, the Saudis are crying on each other's shoulders about big bad Iran, and they shouldn't have picked the fight. In fact, Saudi Arabia had pledged it wasn't going to allow the U.S. to use its territory, and they did exactly that. None of these countries have an organic political base. They're all these, from one tribe that happened to dominate the other tribes. And then they establish, like the Saudis, establish themselves as, we're the royal house of Saud. We're the monarchy. Yeah, give me a break. You guys were a bunch of, you're just camping out in the desert for a year until you found oil. And all of a sudden oil made you smart, made you intelligent. I don't think so. So the power of the dollar is becoming weaker for them. And this is where, think of it, there are only two countries there in that whole Gulf region that elect their political leaders. One is Iraq, the other is Iran.
Yeah, great points, Larry. And now this gets into, I think, what we are seeing from the Trump administration, which is panic masked as aggression, as increasing aggression, especially on the front of a potential ground operation or multiple operations. Of course, you have Israel, Channel 13. They seem to often be the megaphone for what's going to happen for the United States' military front. They say the U.S. is set for a ground invasion to quote unquote open the Strait of Hormuz with Israeli intelligence support. And the Wall Street Journal, Larry, is reporting that Trump is weighing a military operation on the ground of Iran to extract 1,000 pounds of uranium from Iran. And this comes, as you probably saw these comments from Trump before we came on this program, Larry, where he is now making very contradictory claims, as he often does. Yeah. He's talking to a new and better regime right now. Regime change has already happened, according to him, and that if the deal isn't going to be made soon between Iran and the U.S., that he is going to end the lovely stay in Iran by obliterating all of their electric plants, oil wells, Kharg Island, on and on. So, Larry, what do you make of this? These flurry of developments on the ground operations side, because there's been a lot of buildup to this, many days of reports of the forces arriving, the Marines, paratroopers now. Your thoughts about this?
What's the point? I mean, okay. let's go with the Kharg Island scenario. Now, recall what Donald Trump and his Secretary of Treasury, Scott Bessent, did 3 weeks ago. They lifted all of the oil sanctions on Iran. Okay, Danny, here's your chance. Why did they do that?
You tell me, Larry.
Well, did they want to cut the supply of oil or increase the supply of oil?
They close the Strait of Hormuz, you mean?
No. So when they lifted the sanctions on
Oh,
Iran,
yeah, they wanted to increase the supply of oil.
okay, I want you to follow through the logic here. So, and they wanted to increase the supply of oil because they wanted to try to keep the price of oil low, recognizing that if rising prices of oil are going to cost everybody more money. All right. So now what is he proposing to do with Kharg Island? He's going to blow up their oil wells and basically reduce the supply of oil. Oh, okay. I get it, I think. It's completely contradictory. Or
Larry, before you go on, I was just going to say, he's already said he was going to do that, and it already had a massively negative effect on oil prices in the sense that they went up, but continue.
Yeah. So that's the objective, to inflict as much damage on Kharg Island so it can't pump any more oil. Or he's also said, no, I want to get control. I want to control all the Iranian oil. Okay, great. You got all that control up there in Kharg. How do you get it out of the Strait of Hormuz? How do you get it out of the Persian Gulf? Attach, bags of oil to dolphins and have them swimming out. It does nothing to open the Strait of Hormuz, which then brings you back. So, okay, so you're going to have to count a ground force to somehow take the Strait of Hormuz, except how does a ground force take the Strait of Hormuz? Answer is it doesn't. To open the Strait of Hormuz, basically, you're going to have to ensure that there are no mines. So you're going to sweep up all the mines, that there are no underwater mini submarines with torpedoes, that there are no underwater marine drones that can be maneuvered and crash into your ships and blow them out of the water, that there are no regular drones above ground that can be launched and reach the Strait of Hormuz, that there are no artillery pieces and shore guns that can reach out and hit ships in that region, and that there are no missiles that can hit. So explain to me how putting 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 guys into this Chemish island, how that stops any of that. It doesn't. That's the point. So you got to step back and say, okay, what is the mission? You don't have to be Clausewitz or Sun Tzu or some advanced military strategist to figure this stuff out. Just ask yourself the simple question: what is it we're trying to accomplish? Other than just look good and say, hey, we're, like Douglas MacArthur did in his landings at Leyte Gulf, where they filmed it 17 takes. They wanted to get him coming off the shore, and he made sure they reshot it over and over and over until they had the right take. Well, this is not a PR stunt. What is the actual military consequence? And I draw the parallel with the U.S. war in the Pacific, where the very first battle we fought on land, where we used ground forces, was Guadalcanal. And the reason the mission was seize this island, prevent the Japanese from being able to use it to launch airstrikes on any ships in the region, because this is near New Zealand and Australia. And it was to get control, if you will, of the air by using that island as an aircraft carrier. So that was the military objective, and we achieved that. That was clear. That's what you're trying to do. But you step back here and say, okay, what the hell are we trying to do on the ground? What's the military objective? Piss off the Iranians, because that's really what it's going to do. Oh, and put our soldiers in harm's way so they're more likely to be killed and wounded. Yeah, that's going to happen too. So, do I think Donald Trump is going to do this? Yes, I do. I think he's got enough crazy people around him, who don't understand a damn thing about logistics and military capabilities, and that they're going to go ahead and encourage him to do this. And then it's going to be some unfortunate sailors, Marines, or Army personnel that are going to pay the price.
Yeah, Iran is saying, come closer. They're releasing Lego videos. They're releasing statements to their own media. The Iranian military has videos of soldiers on the shores of the Persian Gulf, saying, come closer. We're waiting for you. I mean, there's no, it doesn't seem like there's any fear, at least from what we can gather, of anything like this. And the idea, Larry, of seizing 1,000 pounds of uranium from Iran. I mean, how does it even happen without? How does it even happen? I don't know how.
Well, okay, so I actually worked on an exercise to do that very thing, but it's been about 20 years ago. So first of all, you got to look at, to get there, the sites where the enriched uranium is stored is in the interior of Iran. So your first challenge is how to get there. These helicopters, like the Chinook 47 or the Black Hawk, those would be the two most likely ones that would be used. Or if you could use a C-130 aircraft. But again, that's assuming you can fly over Iran without getting shot down. And we've already seen that that's not possible. So one of particularly if you have to go 800 miles inside Iran to get to one of these sites, well, a plane has to go in advance to drop off fuel bladders. These are like big, giant trash bags, only huge bags filled with aviation fuel, so that the helicopters can land, get refueled, and then take off to get to the site. So once you get to the site, and that, as we saw with even the raid to get bin Laden in Pakistan, I mean, that thing was cooked from the inside. We had pre-coordinated with the Pakistanis what we're going to do. They turned off lights in the valley. They basically made sure that there was no chance that the United States would face opposition. Well, and even with that, there were problems. One of the helicopters had a catastrophic accident and crashed into a wall. So, but let's say you get there, and the places are going to be heavily defended, and you try to fight your way through. Let's say you can fight your way through, but you're going to take enormous losses. The United States is going to take significant casualties. That was the lesson that was the outcome of the exercise I worked on. It was unacceptable losses. But then once you get that, then you've got to package up that 1,000 pounds or maybe of uranium in something that's shielded, which, that may add another 500 pounds to 1,000 pounds. All of a sudden you're talking with some real weight. And then you got to make sure you got the helicopter that can handle it. And so you're going to have an additional helicopter just to haul something like that. So, I mean, it's just, the raid to recover nuclear material, it's a great Hollywood script, as long as you suspend all reality with respect to the requirements for aircraft to get from point A to point B, and assume that you don't have any accidents, and that, we've had too many of these experiences over the years where, the hostage rescue attempt in 1980 to get the U.S. hostages out of Iran, that was called Eagle Claw. That one of the planes ran into one of the helicopters out in the desert, caught on fire, killed. I think it killed 6 people. And a friend of mine, good friend of mine, was one of the young Army Rangers on that mission. He was providing perimeter security. when that happened. Then we jump ahead to the Bin Laden thing. One of the helicopters crashed. So the odds that you're going to have perfect functioning equipment, great weather, nobody does anything stupid, pretty low. So you always plan for it. There's going to be a screw up here somewhere. And then at the end, so you take 1,000 pounds of enriched uranium, then what? Because you got to shield it in such a way so you don't radiation sick, irradiate all your team members.
Right.
Yeah, this just.
Are they coming in with hazmat suits there? I mean.
Well, they'd have to. It's not just a hazmat suit's not going to protect you against radiation. You got to have shielding that prevents that radiation from penetrating, and that's why you've got to get it into containers that are protected, but then you can move with 3 or 4 guys. 1,500 pounds, 4 guys ain't moving. That's over 300 pounds a piece, or 400 pounds a piece. Yeah, so it's just, that doesn't make sense.
And then, Larry, is Iran waiting for this? I assume that there's been major preparations, given how Iran is talking, given how long. I mean, it takes a while for all these forces to have gotten to the Middle East, and now they have to prepare for an operation. So this has been many, many weeks in the making. Not to mention that I'm sure Iran has been, in their videos, in their statements, they constantly say that they've been preparing for this for years, for a U.S. ground attack. So what happens then when Iran responds? Because I assume that they will be very aware when U.S. paratroopers or Marines or whoever is making landing on their soil.
Well, it depends on who's telling the story. If it's the American briefer saying, the Iranians are weak, they're a bunch of wimps, they're terrible at fighting, they'll run away, so we won't expect any opposition. Or the Iranians will say, yeah, we're waiting for them. They'll set up and ambush us. That's the danger here, that we've talked so much about it, and it's been so much out in the open that you've eliminated the element of surprise whatsoever. Now, I can't, you should always keep in mind that perhaps the discussions about Kharg Island and Kemesh Island or going after a nuclear site, maybe those are deliberately being put out there in order to disguise some other op. But I, for the life of me, can't imagine what that other op would be. In terms of, if you come back to say, what is it we're trying to accomplish? If we're trying to accomplish the decapitation of the Iranian regime, that still doesn't guarantee that there is a regime replacement. The depth of support for the Iranian, the Islamic Republic, appears to be quite deep and quite broad. What are they going to do? Take an island, Bandar Abbas, or a port, Bandar Abbas? So it's just, these guys are so worried about the propaganda aspect of this for domestic political control that they toss operational security for potential people going on such missions out the window.
Yeah. And I imagine that a lot of the push to speed up a ground attack, a ground assault on Iran has a lot to do, as we've been hearing day after day, Larry, on the energy markets and what's been going on there.
Yeah.
Bloomberg just reported and concluded that not only is Iran's grip on the Strait of Hormuz tighter even after a month of the war, but that this is marks the biggest strategic victory in the war thus far. And I wanted to show a graph that kind of gets to a major, I think, a reality that's not being acknowledged, of course, by the mainstream media, by the West, by the Trump administration, of course, is that Iranian oil sales are not only up, but they are, if we look at this, this is China and where the oil is going to China. It's both Iranian oil, Russian oil, and Venezuelan oil that's being stored, in the South China, Eastern China Sea, going to China. I mean, in effect, Iran has been making more money, and they forced the United States to relieve sanctions. What has been the true impact of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz? Because every time Donald Trump talks about it, we don't have it. There's nothing. There's we don't trade that much through the Strait of Hormuz, so it doesn't really affect us. But it seems like it's having a major effect on the markets, and we haven't even gotten to Yemen yet, which has the ability at any point to close the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, which I imagine would make things even worse for the oil markets. But your assessment, Larry, of this?
So you're an urban kid, right? You don't have a car, or do you have a car?
No, my wife has a car. I don't have a car, but we're both city kids. But she does have a car.
Yeah. Okay, and has she been having to pay more gas to fill that thing up?
Yeah, well, we were just in California, and the gas was $6 a gallon. And like we didn't have to do it with our family, and they, we drove a little bit with them, but yeah, no, really bad, really bad.
So did you drive cross country to California?
No, we flew, but and the ticket prices are really expensive. But when we were in California, we drove. Yeah,
we rented a car. Okay, so that's the number one thing that's hitting Americans right now is that price of oil has gone up, and so the price of gas, as does the price of diesel. Diesel's up like, if gas has gone up $1, diesel's gone up twice that, $2. Well, then you look around you at everything that hauls food, hauls all the essentials of life. Those are trucks running on diesel right now. We haven't gotten to the age where Elon Musk's electric trucks are running ruling the roads. But with that kind of impact on the economy, it's only going to get worse. The inflation is going to go up, not down. And then we're stuck in a situation where the economy is slowing, people are losing jobs, but the prices are going up. That's called stagflation. Last time we had a major battle with this was in the 1970s, back when I was in college and just starting out in life. So it's something that we haven't seen for well over 50 years. Is going to be hitting us, and it's also it's hitting globally. So the price of fuel is going up, the price of transportation dramatically going up, fertilizer prices dramatically going up, and this is not cost free. It means the country is going to be doing without certain things. And then you've got shortages in the supply chain on top of it. So what Iran achieved in tightening, putting controls on the products that come out of the Persian Gulf, was it essentially set off a bomb. It's like setting off a bomb on board a plane. It's exploded it. The plane's going to crash because it's not just affecting the oil sector. It's affecting the liquid natural gas sector, which that has secondary, tertiary effects into other activities. And then, it's affected the fertilizer market by raising costs dramatically for fertilizer because urea is processed out of some of the petrochemical plants. Helium, apparently critical for the production of computer chips. I didn't know that, but now I do. And sulfuric acid, which is, that's a major, let's call it a precursor chemical that's involved with, generating nuclear fuel out of uranium. So the lot of secondary, tertiary consequences from this decision to close the Gulf that nobody really thought through, or I'm sure you had never read an article on it. But now that it's happening, all of a sudden people are realizing how dependent they are upon that Persian Gulf to handle the flow of oil and everything else.
Yeah, and Larry, what does the entrance of Yemen now into the war? There's not a lot of panic about Yemen's capabilities adding onto Iran's in the, let's say,
Yeah.
the missile arena and attacks on Israel and perhaps even the Gulf if it gets to that point. But more so, it's all focused on all across Axios, Bloomberg. They're all talking about the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. What does Yemen's entrance in the war mean for the coming days and weeks, and what do you expect?
Well, actually, not a lot from the standpoint of number one, the freedom of navigation in the Red Sea has not been reestablished since December of 2023, and so it's been limited. So no ships going to Israel, and no Israeli ships allowed to pass. The Houthis have been willing to allow other ships to sail in and out, but a lot of those ships have declined, and they'll go down around the Horn of Africa simply because their insurance companies say, if you go through the Red Sea, we're not covering you. Too dangerous. So I think what you're seeing right now is more of a symbolic gesture by the Houthis. Hey, we're in solidarity with our brothers and sisters in Iran and elsewhere. Now, if you get them, if they get a big, fat, juicy target, they'll take it. And they've already launched some missiles, but it's not going to dramatically change the face of the war because the vital sector is, Red Sea's already basically closed. The one that got everybody going crazy is the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've been asking everyone this, Larry. What have you made of the overall regional picture on the side of the axis of resistance now that we are over a month into this war? Because we touched briefly on Hezbollah. I believe the number now is between 80 to 100 Israeli Merkava tanks destroyed. But there's heavy fighting all across. They're firing advanced missiles. They're confronting the Israeli occupation army directly as well. And then the Iraqi resistance has been a major force in Iraq during this time. And then, of course, we have Ansarallah, we have, and of course, the big one, Iran, who was forced to defend itself from the aggression immediately and initially. So what has been your take on this moment now that we've seen how it's transpired, especially regionally on the side of the axis of resistance?
Well, number one, the Gulf Arabs are dying. I think is a real question whether United Arab Emirates and the government in Bahrain will exist in a year. They may be gone in 6 months because there's no there. Populations like Qatar, Kuwait. I anticipate that Iraq will take control of Kuwait within the year as this war progresses, because I don't see this war slackening off. And I think the alliance between Iran and Iraq will continue to grow stronger, not weaker. So when you look at like Saudi Arabia, the kingdom of the Sauds, about 45% of the people that quote live there, they're indentured servants. They're not living there because they're going, damn, is this Saudi Arabia a cool place to live or what? With the restrictions they have on alcohol, the restrictions they have on women, what women can do, what women can't do. Iran, by contrast, is far, far more open and lax on those issues compared to the Saudis. So the Saudis, because all of these countries lack a political constituency, they lack the concept of national identity. Because whether they bring in a soccer team or whatever, they're always hiring outsiders to come do their shit for them because they can't do anything on their own. So this, what Iran is doing is basically restructuring the political power set up there in the Persian Gulf. And it would not surprise me to see Turkey's Erdogan want to work closely with the Iranians in doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and then finally, Larry, we get into the bigger picture here. What have you made? You know, not only has China made out very well with regards to Iranian sources are showing that they're saying that they are letting ships through the Strait of Hormuz. It's just that they're Chinese tankers, affiliated tankers.
Well,
They're Russian
and they're paying.
the toll. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Which Marco Rubio said never is going to happen, but Larry, I think it's already happening from what I've seen. So, how does this affect overall this push toward the multipolar world, the dollar? There was one graph I saw that showed that the percentage of reserves held in the dollar as of 2025 had already been plummeting, and it's getting worse. Does this make things worse? The energy crisis that we're seeing, and what does it mean for the changing world order?
Well, let's say worse for who? Okay, it is going to create an inflationary spike across the board. It will then, the price will be so high for oil, it will increase and incentivize people to buy electric vehicles. And the number one country on that front that makes electric vehicles is China. So you get a shift to electric vehicles, at least in a lot of the urban areas. I'm not sure that it makes sense for some of the rural or remote areas. It is going to enrich, as you said, both Iran and Russia, and I would expect other OPEC countries that also produce oil, like Nigeria. There may be, it'll be a boon for Venezuela, but again, they're limited because their infrastructure is such they can only get out, let's say, 1 million barrels a day, so they're not drawing out huge quantities. This is what I argue. We're witnessing the emergence of an entirely new economic political order, in the same way that your father or mother or grandfather witnessed the emergence of the United Nations, the emergence of the Bretton Woods financial system, and that basically teed up the United States to be the dominant power in the world, followed by Russia. But it wasn't until 1972 that when Nixon opened China with his initiative, that China came out of the Cultural Revolution days and started in on the capitalist revolution days. And just in an incredible transformation of society in 50 years, China has become the most modern, most industrialized society in the world, and they're running rings around the United States in terms of using robots to produce a whole variety of things. So this war in Iran is sort of a natural outcome of that, because Iran is going to play a critical role in this new economy, and particularly in solidifying the north-south corridor that runs from Russia to the Caspian Sea, all the way down through Iran, through Tehran, down to Chabahar. So this is, we are witnessing something consequential. Remember, the League of Nations, which was set up to be, to try to keep nations from going to war, I think its last day in existence was like April something of 1946. I mean, it was completely irrelevant during the war, and that's what we're seeing now, that the United Nations is completely irrelevant. You get UN personnel killed, who cares? UN Security Council passes a resolution, and the countries, if they don't like it, they just wipe their ass with it and move on. So you've got that breakdown, and then we've also got a I'll call it a scientific and cultural gap. There's both an economic and a military dimension. And so the question is this: what do skyscraping office buildings have in common with U.S. aircraft carriers?
What?
They're both irrelevant for the 21st century. I mean, think of it this way: you've got a 100-story office building, but your people can all work from home. They don't need to go to the office. So why have that building then? So that's why so many of these buildings now are sitting empty. They were built during an era when the model was, hey, go to the office, and you have your office Christmas parties, and people get blackmail material on each other. The same with an aircraft carrier that seemed like a great idea in the 20th century when there weren't hypersonic missiles. And so you could sail in fairly close to a coast of a country and then launch your air missions and intimidate the hell out of them by bombing them. But now you got to stay maybe 1,000 miles offshore to avoid getting hit with a hypersonic missile, which then sort of defeats the idea of carrying those airplanes, because the airplanes only have a 500-mile range. So if you're 1,000 miles off, they can't even get halfway to the mainland where you want them to go without getting refueled. So we're living in a changing world. The technology is changing it. AI is changing it. The Russia and China, their rise as genuine military powers now change the whole equation.
Yeah, definitely. And we didn't even get to the fact that these aircraft carriers, Larry, we have one of them that has been completely taken out of service in this war, the Gerald Ford, which you were on this show, I believe, with our friend Colonel Wilkerson, and we were talking about the plumbing problems that were happening there. And then suddenly there's a massive so-called laundry fire, which then Donald Trump said, this isn't a laundry fire. This is we were actually fired upon many times. He said this to his financier buddies. So this is, this is indeed a crisis, Larry. Anything you want to close with now as we end the program? Anything we didn't cover? I'll leave it to you.
Well, we'll watch. Watching Donald Trump is like watching a Wimbledon tennis match where the same player plays himself, back and forth, and it's on both sides of the net. And it's not going to get any better. I worry. I received signs out of Moscow. I was supposed to go there middle of April, and with Pepe Escobar, we were both told that this session we were going to have had been canceled because there's a expectation out of the Kremlin that there's going to be a dramatic escalation of this war with Iran. So we'll see. Yeah, we will see. Well, we'll head out of here together. I want to thank everybody who gave a super chat and became members. So many of you. I really appreciate it. Hit the like button before you go. Be sure to follow Larry at sonar21.com. I'll be back tomorrow, 12 noon Eastern time, with our friend Stas Kriprivnik. And until then, everybody, bye-bye. See ya. Bye-bye.